My hands are white-knuckled, wrapped around this glistening red apple. All you can hear is my strained breathing and maybe the faint creak of my finger joints. My face is just a mask of pure effort. Veins are popping out of my forehead. My whole body is tense, shaking a little from the strain. I squeeze, my knuckles turning ghostly white, but the apple is still just perfect. Infuriatingly perfect. It doesn't even have a dent. I let out this guttural yell that's half frustration, half defeat, and I squeeze one last time with everything I have. Nothing. This apple is mocking me. I finally give up, dropping it on the table with a thud and shaking out my hand, which is in actual pain. I was convinced this was a myth. You know, that crushing an apple with your bare hands was something for superheroes, mythical strongmen, or just people in movies with trick props. It just seemed like a party trick that was more legend than reality. But what if it's not? What if the secret isn't being a giant or having some kind of superpower? What if it's all about technique and training? I'm going to train for 7 days to find out if a regular guy, with embarrassingly average grip strength, can actually pull this off. This is my journey from total skeptic to, well, we're about to find out. Intro. Day 0. The humiliating baseline. So, that was day 0. The official starting point. And as you saw, it was a complete and total failure. My hands hurt, my ego is definitely bruised, and that apple is sitting on my kitchen counter, probably laughing at me. Let's just take a closer look at the opponent here. It's a standard gala apple. Not too big, not too small. It feels firm, solid, like a polished red rock. And my hands, well, they're hands. They open jars, they type on a keyboard, they give high fives. What they don't do, apparently, is crush fruit into submission. My starting point is this: I can barely make a dent. I tried again after that first attempt, and all I did was hurt my palm and make this tiny, pathetic fingernail mark that I'm pretty sure just polished the apple a bit. This whole challenge came from a late-night internet rabbit hole. You see a video, you see someone do something incredible, and that little voice in your head whispers, "Hey, could I do that?" For me, that video was of people splitting apples like it was nothing. It looked so effortless, so cool. I had to know if it was real. But standing here on day 0 with a throbbing hand and an undefeated piece of fruit, I'm leaning heavily toward no. It feels impossible. It feels like there's a trick. Maybe they secretly microwave the apple for 10 seconds. Maybe they're all secretly related to the Incredible Hulk. My working theory is that it's a mix of freakish genetics and some secret technique that's guarded more closely than a state secret. So the first step is to find a mentor. And my mentor for this quest is the internet. I typed in the magic words, "How to crush an apple with bare hands." And what I found was, interesting. Turns out I'm not the first person to try this. The search results were a mix of confident-looking people in YouTube tutorials and forum posts from other strugglers like me. But a pattern started to emerge. It's not just about squeezing. That was my first mistake. It's a combination of crushing strength and a very specific technique. The articles and videos I found broke it down. It's about grip, sure, but more specifically, it's about crushing grip, pinch grip, and tendon strength. And even more than that, it's about leverage. It's about applying force in a very specific way to exploit the apple's structural weakness. The goal isn't to squash it like a pancake. It's to split it right along its core. And the training? It's not just lifting heavy weights. The sources I found pointed to some really old-school specific exercises. Things I had never even heard of. One name kept popping up, Danny Hodge. An old-school wrestler and boxer who was legendary for his grip strength, still crushing apples well into his 80s. His secret weapon? Among other things, a newspaper. Yep, a newspaper. Apparently, one of the best exercises for this kind of strength is to take a full sheet of newspaper and, with only one hand, crumple it into the tightest little ball you can. Over and over again. It sounds simple, maybe even a little silly, but people swear by it. The other recommended tools were more what you'd expect, hand grippers and stress balls. So the plan is to build raw crushing power with those, and develop the specific finger endurance with the newspaper exercise. And finally, the most important part, practicing on the apples themselves. Not to crush them at first, but just to get the feel and practice the hand position. So the plan for the next 7 days is set. It's a 3-part attack. Build raw power with hand grippers. Develop finger strength with the Danny Hodge newspaper trick. Perfect the hand placement and that specific splitting motion. I'm armed with a stack of old newspapers, a 100-pound resistance hand gripper I just bought, and a very large bag of apples. I am still deeply skeptical. My hand still hurts. But I have a plan. Day 0 is over. Tomorrow the training begins. Day 1, the plan and the pain all right. It's the morning of day 1. And the optimism of having a plan is being quickly replaced by the cold, hard reality of what that plan actually is. My hands are still a bit sore from my pathetic attempts yesterday, which doesn't feel like a great start. But no excuses. First up, the newspaper exercise. I have a stack of old papers, and the instructions are simple. Take 1 full sheet, hold it by a corner, and using only that hand, crumple it into the tightest ball possible. Sounds easy, right? Wrong. It is shockingly, deceptively hard. I hold my arm out, and the first few crumples are fine. But as the ball gets smaller and denser, my fingers just start to burn. The paper fights back. Getting it from a loose wad into a truly compact ball requires a level of finger endurance I just don't have. My forearm is on fire. I'm only on my 3rd sheet of paper, and I feel like I've been rock climbing for an hour. This is humbling. Danny Hodge was just a different breed of human. I get through 10 sheets with my right hand, creating a sad little pile of not very tightly balled paper, and then switch to my left. My left hand is even weaker. It's cramping. This is genuinely one of the weirdest and most uncomfortable exercises I have ever done. But I can feel it working deep in my forearms and all the tiny little muscles in my hands. After the newspaper ordeal, it's time for the hand grippers. I bought a set that's adjustable and started with the 100-pound setting. The goal I saw online was 3 sets of 50 to 100 reps. The first 10 reps feel powerful. I'm thinking, yeah, I can do this. By rep 20, I'm slowing down. By rep 30, each squeeze is a fight. By rep 40, I'm making weird faces. By 50, I can't even fully close it anymore. My hand has just given up. 100 reps seems superhuman right now. I grind out 3 sets of about 35 reps on each hand, with a lot of shaking and whimpering. The pump in my forearms is unreal. They feel like they're full of concrete. So strength portion, done. Now for technique. I grab an apple, not even going to try to crush it. Just practicing the grip. The tutorials say to remove the stem. Then, place the thumbs on top, right in the little hollow where the stem was. Fingers curl around the bottom. The key, they say, is to use the fleshy, muscular part of your thumb base to press into that hollow. And the motion isn't just a squeeze. It's a roll. You're supposed to squeeze while rolling your hands outward, trying to pry the apple apart with your thumbs. It feels awkward and unnatural. My hands feel too small, or the apple feels too big. I practice the motion over and over. Squeeze and roll. Squeeze and roll. I'm not using full pressure, just trying to get the muscle memory down. At the end of the day, I have to try. I know I shouldn't expect anything, but I can't help it. I grab a fresh apple, set my grip, take a deep breath, and I squeeze. And roll. Pain. That's the first thing I feel. A sharp, deep ache in my palms. The apple? It gives a little, I think. I feel a tiny bit of movement that wasn't there yesterday. I look at it closely. There's a very, very faint dent where my thumb was. It's barely visible, but it's more than I could do on day 0. It's not a victory, not even close. But it's not nothing. Okay, end of day 1. My hands are on fire. I am not exaggerating. I can barely make a fist. That newspaper exercise is some kind of medieval torture. I have a newfound respect for old-timey strongmen. I genuinely don't know if this is going to work. 7 days feels really short. But I did make a dent. A tiny one. So I guess that's something. I'm going to go soak my hands in ice water. See you tomorrow. Day 2, the grind and the ghost of a crackle. Waking up on day 2 was an experience. My hands felt stiff, achy, and just angry at me. Even brushing my teeth felt weird. But the challenge goes on. Today's plan is the same as yesterday, just more intense. The grind is real. I started with the newspapers again. It's still awful, but today I focused on making each paper ball smaller and tighter than the last. My hands were screaming, but I pushed through 12 sheets per hand this time. The pile of crumpled paper is growing. It's my weird, papery monument to suffering. Then the hand grippers. My forearms were still sore, but I felt like I could push a little harder. I fought to get the handles to touch on every single rep. My hands would start shaking uncontrollably around rep 25, but I just held on. I managed to hit 3 sets of 40 reps for each hand. It's a small improvement, but it's progress. The pump was even more intense. My forearms looked like they belonged to Popeye. Now for the important part, technique. I grabbed an apple and got into the now familiar stance. I spent a good 15 minutes just applying pressure, rotating the apple, trying to find a weak point, a seam, as the tutorials called it. But the apple just felt like a solid, unyielding rock. Frustration started to kick in. Am I just not strong enough? Is my technique wrong? I decided to try something. The research said softer, riper apples are easier. The ones I had were super crisp. So I found one that was a little older, a little softer to the touch. I set my grip on the softer apple. I took a deep breath, focused all my energy into that specific, awkward motion. I squeezed. I rolled my thumbs outward. And then I heard it. It wasn't loud. It was a tiny, almost imaginary sound. A faint crick. I froze. Did I imagine that? I looked at the apple. And there, right under my thumb, was a tiny hairline fracture in the skin. It wasn't a split. It was just a little line. But it was there. I hadn't just dented it. I broke the skin. I tried to do it again, but my hands were just too tired. But it didn't matter. That one tiny sound, that one tiny fracture changed everything. Okay. End of day 2. I feel different. This morning I was just going through the motions, thinking this was a fool's errand. But now, I heard a crackle. It was so small I thought I might have made it up, but I saw it. A tiny break in the skin. It's the first real proof that this isn't impossible. That my pathetic efforts are actually doing something. My hands are in agony, and I still can't get anywhere near splitting the thing, but for the first time I have a sliver of hope. That little sound was the most beautiful thing I've heard all week. The grind continues tomorrow, but tonight I'm sleeping with a little bit of belief. This might actually be possible. Day 3, the glimmer of hope expands. I woke up on day 3 with a new sense of purpose. That tiny crackle was my motivation. The stiffness in my hands was still there, but today it felt more like the soreness after a good workout. The muscles were rebuilding. At least that's what I told myself. The training was becoming a familiar ritual. The newspapers, my papery adversary. Today I timed myself to see how fast I could crumple a 10-page section. I beat my previous imaginary time by a whole minute. A small, meaningless victory, but a victory nonetheless. Next, the grippers. I walked over with a bit of a swagger. The 100-pound setting was still my enemy, but a familiar one. Today I hit a new milestone, 3 sets of 50. I actually did it. On the last rep of the last set, my hand was shaking so badly. It looked like I was waving, but the handles touched. 50 times. With training done, it was time for the main event. No soft apple today. That felt like cheating. I picked a fresh, crisp, arrogant-looking Honeycrisp. A true test. I took a moment to mentally rehearse. Stem out. Thumbs in the divot. Fingers curled underneath. I remembered that outward rolling motion. I took a deep breath and started to apply pressure. Slowly, then building. I squeezed with my fingers and pushed with my palms, imagining my thumbs were two wedges. My hands started to tremble. The pain flared up. I was about to give up. And then it happened again. Crick. But this time it was louder. A definite, audible noise. I didn't stop. I kept the pressure on, pouring every ounce of strength into my hands. Crack-ack! It felt like a tiny earthquake in my hands. I looked down and my heart leaped. The hairline fracture was now a full-blown crack. It ran about an inch down from my thumb. Juice was actually starting to well up from the break. I hadn't split it in half, but I had created a significant, undeniable structural failure. I let out a whoop of excitement. I couldn't help it. I held the apple up, admiring the damage. It was beautiful. I did that. The pain in my hands vanished, replaced by a surge of adrenaline and pride. Yes. Look at this. Do you see this? That is a real crack. I did that. Okay, I'm a little excited. 2 days ago, I couldn't even leave a mark. Today, I broke a crisp Honeycrisp. The training is working. The pain, the stupid newspapers, the endless gripper squeezes, it's all paying off. For the first time, this doesn't feel like a maybe. It feels like a when. I've got 4 days left, and for the first time, I think I'm actually going to do this. This is awesome. Day 4, the plateau and the doubt. Coming into day 4, I was riding high. The cracked apple from yesterday was my trophy. I felt invincible. I thought today I'd make even more progress. I was wrong. Today was a lesson in humility. Today I hit a wall. The morning routine felt different. The novelty was gone, now it was just work. The newspaper crumpling was a chore. The hand grippers were even worse. I picked up the 100-pound gripper I had conquered yesterday, and it felt like it weighed 200 pounds. I couldn't get close to 50 reps. My first set was a struggle to get to 35. My strength just wasn't there. My muscles felt flat and overworked. It was so frustrating. I was going backward. Despite the bad training session, I had to try the apple. I grabbed a pink lady, firm and smooth. I went through the ritual. Stem out. Thumbs in. Squeeze and roll. Nothing. I tried again. Repositioned my hands. Squeezed harder, ignoring the pain. Still nothing. Not a dent. Not a creak. I tried for 10 solid minutes, grunting with effort, my face turning red. The apple just sat there, a perfect symbol of my failure. It felt like day 0 all over again. The progress I'd made felt like a mirage. I was so frustrated I almost threw the apple against the wall. I slumped down at my kitchen table, defeated. What was I doing wrong? Had I peaked on day 3? The despair was real. I almost decided to quit. But then I looked at the little pile of crumpled newspapers. I thought about hearing that first crack. That progress was real. Plateaus are part of the process. Giving up now would make all the pain from the last 3 days pointless. Look, this is way harder than I thought. I hit a massive wall today and honestly almost gave up. The high from yesterday is gone, and the doubt is back. But seeing that tiny bit of progress is what's keeping me going. This journey is a roller coaster, and right now I'm at the bottom of a big drop. If you want to see if I can push through this and actually pull this off, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. It genuinely keeps me motivated. Okay, back to the grind. I'm not a quitter. I decided to change my approach. Instead of brute strength, which I clearly didn't have today, I'd focus on technique. I went back to my digital sensei, the internet. I rewatched tutorials. One thing stood out, using your knee as a brace. You press the bottom of the apple against your knee, letting you focus all your force on prying with your thumbs. It's like training wheels for apple splitting. I decided to try it. I sat down, placed the apple against my knee, and set my grip. It felt much more stable. I could focus 100% of my effort on that outward tearing motion. It was still hard, but the force felt more targeted, more efficient. End of day 4. Today was rough. Probably the hardest day so far mentally. My strength vanished, and I couldn't make a dent in an apple to save my life. But I didn't quit. I switched gears and worked on this new technique with my knee. It feels like a cheat, but it also feels like it might be the key. I didn't break any apples today. I didn't even make a mark. But I didn't give up. Sometimes not giving up is the only victory you get. Tomorrow is a new day. Day 5, the technical breakthrough. Day 5 began with cautious realism. The high of Day 3 was a distant memory, and the frustration of Day 4 was fresh in my mind. Today was about brains over brawn. Pure technique. My hands felt a little better. The rest helped. The newspaper crumpling was almost meditative. I wasn't just crushing paper, I was studying my own hands. The hand grippers felt better too. The strength was coming back. I hit my 3 sets of 50 reps with a controlled, steady pace. I felt strong again, but I knew strength alone wasn't the answer. After the warm-up, I grabbed an apple and a chair to master the knee brace method. I spent 20 minutes just practicing the setup, not even applying pressure. I became obsessed with hand placement, using the outside part of my thumb knuckle like a blade, digging it into the stem divot. Then I started to apply the prying motion. Gently at first. I could feel the tension building right at the top of the apple. It was a completely different feeling from just squeezing. This was a tearing force. This was it. I grabbed a fresh apple, a large, firm Fuji. I sat down, braced it on my knee, positioned my thumb knuckles, took a deep breath, and began to pry my thumbs apart. Kiki crack! It was instant and loud. The apple didn't just get a fracture. A deep, wide crack appeared, running a third of the way down its body. I gasped. The efficiency of the technique was staggering. I'd used maybe half the effort of yesterday for 10 times the result. I was onto something huge. I grabbed another apple. Brace. Knuckles. Pry. Crack! Another one. A clean, deep fracture. I was doing it consistently. I felt like a scientist who had just solved a complex equation. It wasn't about being the strongest. It was about understanding the physics. Now for the next step. Could I do it without the knee? I stood up, held an apple, and tried to replicate the feeling. My bottom fingers needed to act as the knee, providing a solid base. I set my grip, consciously squeezing my lower fingers into the base of the apple as hard as I could. Then I focused all my mental energy on my thumb knuckles, on that outward tearing roll. I squeezed and pried. The apple resisted. It was so much harder without the knee. But I held the tension, my whole body rigid. The pressure built and built. Pop! It was a different sound. Not a crackle, but a pop. The apple didn't just crack, it split. It broke open about halfway. I had done it. I had split an apple without any help. My hands were shaking, but I had done it. Wow. Just wow. Today was the breakthrough. It's all about the technique. It's not a squeeze, it's a pry. A tear. That knee brace trick was the missing link. It let me feel the correct motion. And then, I was able to do it without the knee. I can get a partial split consistently. The final piece of the puzzle just clicked into place. Tomorrow we go for the full split. The clean break. I can taste victory. It tastes like apples. Day 6, the final rehearsal, this is it. Day 6. The final day of training. There's a different energy today. Not desperation, not doubt. It's a calm, focused intensity. I know what I need to do. Today is a dress rehearsal. The training session was the most focused one yet. I attacked the newspaper exercise. My hands moved with a speed and confidence that was unimaginable on day 1. The pile of paper balls is my paper mountain of progress. Then the grippers. I picked up the 100-pound gripper. It felt light. I'm not even kidding. It felt manageable. I powered through 3 sets of 60 reps on each hand and felt like I could have done more. The change in my grip strength is real. After the strength work, I moved to technique drills. I grabbed an apple with one goal in mind, the full split. I stood in the middle of my kitchen. No knee brace. No tricks. Just me and the apple. I focused on the feeling from yesterday, the solid base from my fingers, the precise placement of my thumb knuckles. I took a deep breath and began the motion. Squeeze from the bottom, pry from the top. I applied the pressure in a smooth building wave. I felt the initial resistance, then the familiar crack as the skin broke. But I didn't stop. I kept driving my thumbs outward. The crack widened. I could feel the internal structure giving way. The apple gave a final, shuddering pop and split completely in my hands. 2 clean halves. I did it. A huge grin spread across my face. I hadn't planned to go all the way today, but it just happened. It felt natural. To make sure it wasn't a fluke, I grabbed another one. Set up, breath, repeat. Crack, pop! Another perfect split. And another. I was a human apple-splitting machine. I had to force myself to stop to save my hands for the grand finale. This is it. The eve of the final battle. Tomorrow is day 7. My hands are sore, but they feel powerful. This journey has been insane. I went from being a total non-believer to thinking, maybe. And now I know I can do it. I've done it. Multiple times. There's only one thing left to do. Recreate the scene of my initial failure and turn it into a victory. I'm ready. See you tomorrow. Day 7, the climax and the victory. The scene is identical to the start of the video. Same tight shot, same table, same kind of glistening red apple. But this time, the vibe is completely different. There's a quiet confidence. A stillness. I take a moment and look at the camera. It all comes down to this. Day 7. 7 days ago, I stood right here and was utterly defeated by a piece of fruit. My hand hurt, my ego was shattered, and I was convinced this was impossible. Let's just take a quick look back. That guy had no idea what he was doing. He thought it was about brute force. He was wrong. It's not about how hard you can squeeze. It's about how smart you can squeeze. It's about technique, patience, and a whole lot of crumpled up newspaper. I turn my attention back to the apple. My final opponent. I pick it up. It feels familiar now. I remove the stem. I position my hands with a practiced, deliberate precision that was totally absent a week ago. My fingers curl around the bottom, creating that solid platform. My thumb knuckles find their home in the divot on top. I take a single deep cleansing breath. And I begin. The pressure builds slowly, steadily. I'm in complete control. I can feel the force concentrating at the top of the apple. It resists. For a fleeting moment, a flicker of the old doubt returns. What if I can't do it now on camera? I push the thought aside. I trust the training. I trust the technique. I increase the pressure, driving my thumbs outward in that prying, tearing motion. Crack! The sound is sharp and clear. The skin is broken. I don't hesitate. I continue to drive the force, rolling my hands, feeling the internal fibers of the apple shred. The crack widens, racing down the side. With one final focused surge of power, I push through. Pop! The apple gives way completely. It splits perfectly in my hands into 2 clean, beautiful halves. Juice trickles onto my fingers. I did it. I look down at the 2 halves, and then up at the camera. A slow, triumphant grin spreads across my face. It's a mix of relief, exhaustion, and pure joy. I let out a happy laugh. I hold the 2 halves up to the camera, showing the clean break. 7 days. From 0 to hero. Conclusion and reflection, so there you have it. It's not a myth. An average person can absolutely learn to split an apple with their bare hands. Let's just look at this one more time. The difference between day 0 and day 7 is night and day. And that difference wasn't magic. It was work. It was a week of pushing through pain, frustration, and self-doubt. So what did I learn? The biggest lesson is that the secret isn't brute strength, it's efficient technique. I could have spent a year on hand grippers and still failed if I didn't learn that prying, outward rolling motion. Your thumbs do all the work. Your fingers are just there to provide a stable platform. The training plan I scraped together from the internet actually worked. That old-school newspaper exercise from guys like Danny Hodge was a game changer for my finger strength. It's humbling and painful, but incredibly effective. The hand grippers built the raw power, and practicing on apples was crucial for the technique. This was about more than just breaking an apple. It was about learning a new skill. You start out incompetent. You find a plan. You put in the work, the deliberate, often tedious practice. You hit plateaus. You have moments of doubt where you want to quit. But if you trust the process and stay consistent, you have a breakthrough. That moment where it all just clicks. And that feeling is one of the most satisfying things in the world. If you take one thing away from this video, let it be this: you are capable of more than you think. That thing you've always thought was impossible? Maybe it's not. Maybe all that separates you from doing it is a 7-day challenge of your own. A decision to try, a plan to follow, and the will to see it through. Thanks so much for coming along on this journey with me. It was a wild week. If you enjoyed this, maybe you'd like to see me try to solve a Rubik's Cube or something equally ridiculous. Let me know in the comments what challenge I should take on next. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a lot of apple slices to eat.